Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the moderator of the next session, Bruno Maçães.
Hello, everyone. Please sit down when you can. We're on a tight schedule. It's my great pleasure to moderate this great session on partnerships in technology. We hear a lot about competition in technology, but I think it's also important to stress that you are not going to have a technological advancement and security without some level of partnerships. This is particularly important for Europe. We have 4 guests in this session. Let me welcome them to the stage without further ado. First, Jozef Síkela, Commissioner for International Partnerships at the European Commission. Second, Juan Battaleme. He is the Secretary for International Affairs at the Argentinian Ministry of Defense. Welcome, Juan. General John Allen, you know him well. He was just on stage. He, of course, is also at the GLOBSEC Foundation. And finally, Richard Verma. He is at Mastercard, but just left very recently the State Department in the United States, where he was Deputy Secretary of State. He's also been ambassador to India, many hats. I will start with you, Commissioner. Europe is in the middle of significant rethinking on its technology policy, and we all want to know what role international partnerships play in that. I know the Global Gateway will have its second forum, I believe in October.
Yep.
And I think it would be a good way to start for you to give us a summary of what the EU is planning in terms of both technology and its foreign policy, how the two fit together.
Okay, I know I have to be brief, and I will try. Well, our new international digital strategy guides us in building digital partnerships abroad. In times of growing digital authorism and systemic rivalry, we must project both its technologies and its model. And the new strategy reaffirms that Europe is a stable, value-based and long-term digital partner to build a real tech ecosystem together. But the digital market is very fast. It moves very fast, and we have to react. Our usual ways of evaluating the projects are nursing their financial backing, and it is not sufficiently agile for us to compete with our rivals and to secure participation of our companies in this project. So we need to become faster, and therefore we set up a special Digital Leap Fund. We are setting up this Digital Leap Fund, a privately managed equity vehicle to scale digital infrastructure in partner countries. It is designed to attract private capital into markets where investments is needed most. So our target is to raise 500 million. It will be focused on medium to large-scale assets, 4G, 5G data centers, IXP, cloud and backbone networks. And maybe our competitors offer cheaper hardware, but we want to offer something more powerful, like a human-centered digital solution. It means secure, inclusive, and right-based digital ecosystem, and to invest in digital skills, public governance, and then safeguards. And I have for you 2 concrete examples. During my mission to Central Asia, we signed the 60 million EU satellite backbone program, a global gateway initiative that will connect 1,600 remote villages across Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan. That means internet access for over 3 million people, including schools, clinics, and public services. And the second example, with the International Telecommunication Union and the UNDP, we launched a 4 million capacity building initiative under the Global Gateway to support digital transformation in developing countries. We aim to train at least 5,000 government officials and policymakers in designing and implementing inclusive human-centric digital policies. I can continue. The list of the things we already do and we plan to do is pretty long. Maybe the EU-Africa-India digital corridor, known as a Blue Raman, which can become a real game changer, a flagship global gateway project that exemplifies our approach to secure high-capacity infrastructure that serves both geopolitical and development goals, connects Europe to India via Africa and the Middle East. So bypassing the choke points, increasing the supply chain resilience and offering an alternative to authoritarian controlled routes. So these are a few examples.
We'll come back to you. I want to ask you a little bit later if there is a contradiction between national self-sufficiency, autonomy, sovereignty on one side and partnerships on the other. But let me hear a little bit from the rest of the panel. Secretary, of course, the EU and Argentina have an important relationship. Could become even tighter if the Mercosur agreement were signed. Maybe you'll tell us a little bit how you see that. I'd also be interested in your thoughts about how the private sector can be a part of these partnerships.
Thank you. Well, as you said, we have a close relation with the European Union in issues related to disinformation and that kind of cybersecurity capabilities. Actually, the current administration is trying to enhance their digital hand and the digital sector. Even if we have the human resources, we are one of the biggest economy in digital domain in Latin America. We have plenty of unicorns there, but we do not develop yet a strong sector on cybersecurity, and we are trying to change that, especially in defense domain area. And we think that we can make a good partnership with Europe, not only with Europe through the Global Gateway, as the previous colleague said, but also with the United States, considering that there is a great power competition, and the great power competitions means digital infrastructure for connectivity. China has the upper hand in Latin America because they offer, they offer good quality products, very cheap for us, and also they offer these kind of opportunities for Latin America as a way to develop our economies. And actually, we do not face the same constraints that the Europe or United States face when you talk on technological issues. Even if we are engaged in the same discussion, because at the very end, technology means human rights, technology means develop, the discussion about the autocratic developed model against the liberal developed model in the technological domain, in the cyber domain, is quite different, and we are not as aware as we should in this case. Also, the current administration presents several initiatives. We are trying to enhance our artificial intelligence sector, and we are looking in partnership with Europe. And as you said, the private sector is key. For the previous administration, the public sector was the key. For the current administration, the private sector is the key in this issue. But doing it, for example, following the GDPR standard, following European standard, which are the main model for us to do policy and to implement the regulation. So I will stop there and continue.
Impressive discipline on time. General, you were telling me earlier that you just arrived from the Shangri-La meetings in Singapore, and you were impressed by how this topic of partnership has not disappeared, contrary to popular perceptions that every country is closing off to the rest of the world. You didn't see that, did you?
No, not at all. You know, the United States has 5 bilateral defense treaties in that part of the world: South Korea, Japan, Thailand, the Philippines, and Australia. And those are long-standing treaties. We have very deep relations at a military level with all of those countries. And when the United States goes to war, we always anticipate that it will be in a coalition manner. I commanded the 50-nation coalition in Afghanistan, so I had recent experience at that. The willingness of those states to remain closely engaged with us, apart from whatever the rhetoric might be, they are not letting the rhetoric define their willingness to remain closely engaged with us, either at a military level or increasingly for them, embracing the reality that future war will be highly technological, highly digitized or digitalized. But their capacities right now are relatively limited. As I said in the previous session, much of what we anticipate accomplishing in the US military is operating out of the hyperscale cloud. And it'll be in that hyperscale cloud where the masses of data will reside that come out of the battle space. And that data will be evaluated and sifted and sorted by the application of AI tools, which will both provide intelligence at speeds we've never seen before, provide commanders assistance or support in decision-making, but also give us really unparalleled capabilities at a digital level of beginning the process of long-range, highly precise target engagement and the attack of the enemy. All of that occurring in a cloud. Now, the experience of doing that is very limited right now with many of our partners. NATO has embraced this. It's an objective. What the cloud ultimately looks like remains to be determined. It'll probably be a private sector cloud that ultimately is seconded to NATO in the big scheme of things. But in East Asia, they fully grasp that the conflict that may emerge with China, there will very likely, depending on how this unfolds, be a horizontal escalation across the region. And so there's a very great interest in being capable of interoperating with US forces present in the region or closing on the region, and they know that we're going to be fighting out of the cloud. And that's why they're very interested in it, have limited capabilities, and to, I think, our country's credit, the State Department is doing a lot in this regard. Our commanders on the ground are doing what we can to begin to make the case for the digitalization of those forces to operate out of the cloud so that we can be interoperable across the entire theater in a very short period of time.
Thank you. Mr. Verma, you just left the State Department. I want to hear a little bit. It's a good opportunity to hear about your experience there. How is it, my question, if I want to be direct, how can one develop technology partnerships when the background, it's just been described by John Allen, is the background of potential conflict? How is it possible to have partnerships when you always have to be preparing for conflict?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for the invitation. And it's great to be here with all of you, and especially with the General, who's a great American patriot. Let me also just say I've been working on European security for over 30 years as an Air Force officer with Polish and Romanian militaries. I was the NDI country representative in Bucharest in 1993 and 94. I worked for Secretary Albright. I came here with President Obama in 2009 for the signing of the New START Treaty, and the last 2 years worked a lot on European security issues, and I took over the Special Envoy for Ukraine reconstruction responsibilities from Secretary Pritzker. So this is a subject I care deeply a lot. And when I think about these last few years and the kind of nearly 80 countries that I've been to, you see a world that's really changing quite quickly. Obviously, we have great power competition plays out with the war in Ukraine, or global competition with China. We have obviously the threats of terrorism, unfortunately, continue, nuclear proliferation, rogue regimes. But what I saw were these new challenges our Director of Central Intelligence used to call problems without passports. Problems that know no border, problems that no army could deter or defeat. And what was he talking about? Well, we lived through one of them, which was biological threats and global pandemics. And frankly, the international community didn't do that well in how we dealt with it. We have the threat of climate change now. It's very much upon us. The last 10 years, hottest ever. Last year was the hottest ever recorded. But we also have the threat of technology. And it's been discussed here briefly. We see what happens when certain governments and malign actors use technology for ill purposes, to steal, to surveil, to misinform, to harass. But we've also seen the flip side of technology and what it can do, and this is where I'm so grateful to work at a company like Mastercard, because I see what happens for the benefits of financial inclusion and how to lift people up. Some 35% of the world is not yet connected to the internet. When I hear the commissioner talk about the agreements that he reached in Central Asia, I think, right? I mean, that's super important, because we see the difference in quality of life as a development tool. We see it on the financial side. So your question about partnerships, absolutely. You know, I've been in government in multiple responsibilities now. I see what government does really well: war fighting, evacuations, managing macroeconomics. And frankly, I see what government doesn't do so well: move quickly, innovate, research, risk-taking. And so we have to recognize where the kind of strategic advantages of the public sector and where the strategic advantages of the private sector. And this is where we have to come together. Now, I also heard the president this morning say that, yes, there are geopolitical challenges. Yes, there are concerns about the West, but that doesn't mean decoupling. That means taking greater responsibility, whether it's in defense spending, but also on the technology space. And I think this is where technology companies have to do a better job showing that we are reliable, trustworthy partners. Again, just speaking for Mastercard, I can look at the decades of work in Europe. I look at the 65 billion transactions that were processed just last year. I look at the millions, tens of $millions that have been spent on small business. Frankly, I look at the refugees and workers coming from Ukraine who we trained up with digital skills as part of our Strive program to empower them to continue to do their business. So providing those digital tools, thriving and surviving in this digital economy, that is what we are trying to do. I think we have a good record in doing it. When we partner with governments to provide security, digital trust, that is exactly how we work together. I think it's needed now more than ever, given the range of threats we see, but also given the huge opportunities that are in front of us as well.
I want to ask you a little bit later, how does a company like Mastercard avoid being swept into this environment of geopolitical competition and being made to serve geopolitical interests or being forced to choose between different geopolitical blocs? So we'll come back to that, because it's obviously a difficult challenge, and we have many recent examples of how difficult that is. Commissioner, there's a discussion going on in Europe about what went wrong with European technology. We obviously don't have many great companies that are part of these rankings, the largest internet companies. We don't seem to do that well on AI. There's a fear that we're going to fall behind again on AI, as it happened with the internet economy. And there have been attempts to address this issue, or to think about it at least. The Draghi report talks a lot about the internal market. Could you tell us how important are international partnerships for this? Can they promise growth? Can they promise Europeans that we'll be back in the game of technological competition? Can they make up for the last 33 decades that many people consider 3 lost decades?
They can definitely contribute, but this is not the only solution. Of course, Draghi report focuses mainly on the single market, and I still believe that the single market is the biggest asset of Europe, and also basically also the biggest potential when it comes to like removing all the barriers in the so this is an untapped potential. This is the future potential for Europe, and we should not forget that Europe is still the most attractive market. 500 million most wealthy people in average, with their needs, with their very structured needs, and when it comes to goods and services, it is making us very attractive. I think the volatility is contributing that Europe is getting again a very attractive investment target. So we cannot complain. But the global gateway and our international partnerships are strategic investments in the global stability and in the sustainable future. So this is definitely about the growth. This is about new markets. This is about decarbonization efforts also in regions outside of Europe. This is about the industrialization. But the global gateway is mainly focused on job creation, on creating the value chains, about the growth of the business by connecting new countries to the global markets, by basically transit corridors and then ports, and to increase the accessibility of some of the countries to the world markets, which should contribute to the global trade. But this is also mainly about the global stability, because it's also two major issues. The growth will come, and this is something I mentioned in the morning, from the global south. We will see 5.3 billion like middle class people coming from the global south, and this is not the target of the aid. These are future innovators. This is a lot of ambitions. Lot of potential which should be turned in the real opportunities. Otherwise, it can change to one of the major threats for the global stability. So, and this is also about tackling the root causes of the migration, because the demographic growth till 2050 will come. The half of the increase of the population will come only from 8 countries. 2 Asian ones, India and Philippines, if I'm not mistaken, and mainly Africa.
Indonesia.
Indonesia, and mainly Africa. So we will see only in Africa 50 million people entering the labor market in 5 years. So if we do not offer them sustainable jobs, wealth growth, education for their kids, they might become desperate. And usually people migrate for 2 reasons, either being desperate or having ambitions. Having ambitions is fine, and this is something we welcome, and we can tackle with our legal migration. Of course, we should try to avoid a brain drain. However, and this also contributes to one of the major values, and this is the fight against the poverty. And we know, and I think it was Aristotle saying that the poverty is the parent of revolutions. So turned in the
It may also be possible, Commission, sorry to interrupt, to turn Europe into a pole of attraction for entrepreneurs all over the world. This has certainly been something where the United States has been very successful in the last 3 decades, and Europe not as much. And maybe the global gateway can do that as well. to bring entrepreneurs to Europe, to launch their ideas here? Is that something?
No. The Global Gateway is about mobilize private capital to invest, so mainly European, but of course, like companies from the democratic part of the world to invest abroad, to invest in Africa, in Latin America, because simply the gap is too huge, and we will not be able to manage everything with the private money. So we have to, with the public money, we have to mobilize the private money. And I see the role of my role, I am the policy creator. And together with the partner countries, we have to make, we have to de-risk. We have to make the environment more investment friendly. We can, of course, help with the blended products, with the public guarantee frameworks. However, business usually decides where and when to go. So we can heavily contribute to make new regions more attractive for the investments. This is my major role. And the digitalization, to access to data security will play a major role, because without the data security, you will not be able to attract the investors. And without digitalization, access to the internet, to the pieces of information, you will not be able to tackle issues like education, like a know-how transfer.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. We'll have a period of questions at the end, so start thinking if you have any questions for the Commissioner. Secretary, you mentioned China, so I feel comfortable to insist a little bit on that point. There used to be that song, how does one deal with a problem called Maria? How does one deal with, and I'm going to say problem in quotes, because some people could disagree on this, with the problem called China. How does Argentina think about China? But if you want to answer more generally, the question of freedom and autocracy, how does a country like Argentina think its foreign economic policy along these lines?
In terms of technological and economical policy, China is not an issue, because we are following the selective engagement strategy. Selective engagement strategy is be clear on where our defense and security interests are, and are well connected with the Western world. And economical issues, even some social issues, we can talk, and we are talking with China. That is not the problem for our administration. We belong to the Western Hemisphere. The Western Hemisphere is led by the United States. China is too far away, even if they are present in our economic and social, and at some point in our defense and security issues related when you look at the north part of South America. So that is not the problem. The real problem is that China is offering an alternative model of development that the Western, especially the Europe and the United States, are failing to offer it to us. And one of the problems, I talk about this in the other panel, it's the idea that Latin America is part of the global South. Well, I have bad news. We do nothing to do with Africa. We face different type of problems, different type of political institutions. Our institutions are quite different, and the way we relate to the world are quite different. But you know, this postmodern European idea that the global South should remain engaged, I do not feel as a part, and most of the people in Latin America do not feel as a part of the global South. We prefer to be treated as a part of a transatlantic area,
yes.
Because in the past we were part of the transatlantic area.
Absolutely.
The American initiative of the Atlantic Initiative means exactly that, and the technological term is important. When you look, for example, the oceans and how the Chinese, but not only the Chinese, other people from different types of the world are extracting fish and other things, and are doing technological exploration, not only by sea, but also using satellites in the South Atlantic. You will have this dimension that technological can be quite important for our development, and also to keep our resources in our hand and use it smartly in order to engage positively with the European Union, for example, which is quite important. And we need that the agenda should be moved from this idea of Global South to engage directly.
I'm a Portuguese, and the Portuguese and the Spaniards, we always wanted to introduce this idea of transatlantic, including both the North and the South Atlantic.
Exactly.
It never became very popular, but maybe not too late.
It is a good opportunity. Actually, Portugal is really engaged with Latin America right now. Spain a little bit less, unfortunately. But Portugal and Spain are the bridge for the rest of Europe to deal with Latin America, because you made a good colonization of our territory, and actually we respect in different ways that, for example, the African do not respect the rest of the
You will be very, very popular in Lisbon. I'm sure you have to come and visit. General, the title of the panel, let's not forget about that, is Beyond the West, which would sometimes give people some shivers, perhaps even you if it was in a different context. But here it's presented as a good thing. We have to think beyond the West, don't we?
Well, I've never been a big fan of this term, the West, because the West, in many respects, is used as an exclusive term, as opposed to an inclusive term. And for the future of U.S. and European technology, we absolutely have to think outside North America and the European continent. Let me just, a very brief example, and those of you who've had the chance to get copies of it, we did a major report on critical raw materials. There is no future for our technological trajectory, either on the North American continent or in Europe, without access to critical raw materials and rare earth elements. Just that, but also to be able to process it. The Chinese have a lock on both of those. So much of the world's critical raw materials are in the hands of autocratic or illiberal or totalitarian regimes. Now, frankly, you go to some of the worst places on the planet and the Chinese are running the mines, or Russian gangsters are running security for the strongmen who are running the mines. And so when we talk about partnerships, global partnerships, just to get the stimulus of the critical raw materials into the system, ultimately to fuel the technology of the future, we're going to have to think very seriously about the kinds of partnerships we want to have with countries that can provide these materials to us. And I have to really compliment the whole idea of the global gateway, because it's a lot of things, but the one thing it certainly is, it is a viaduct for values. Mm-hmm. In the end, this is about conveying values as we seek to raise economies, make economies more sophisticated, whatever we want to do with it as an end result. It's about values. So just that alone is going to force us to have to think very seriously as we try to wean ourselves off our dependence on the Chinese critical raw materials, and very importantly, their processing. We've got to think very differently. Europe's going to be many years before it can do it itself. That absolutely necessitates partnerships off the continent. The United States and Canada, North America, have the same issue. Another area that's going to require us to have partnerships, and Chris Miller was sitting in this chair a few moments ago, the author of Chip War, is Europe makes some very sophisticated semiconductors. But if, once again, with the investments that are coming into technology in Europe that have been promised, just in defense alone, Europe does not have the capacity to produce the semiconductors on the continent that it's going to need to support the digitalization of its society at a civil level and the digitalization of its militaries. It's a matter of just scaling. So Europe's going to have to look elsewhere for these semiconductors.
I would add also markets. We need markets.
Of course. So just those 2 points alone, where we're going to get the critical raw materials and the semiconductors that gives us precision to do almost anything. Drive here to the hotel or to put a missile on a target somewhere. We can do it. Europe's got some real sophistication, but it's a matter of scale. So it's going to force us to have partnerships outside the continent. And the great thing about the partnerships that we would want to foster is that they're values-based partnerships. And we should never fall off of that.
Viaduct for Values, if anyone is looking for a title for a book or a report.
May I quote you?
Unless
I like it. It was.
I think I heard you say that at the beginning of the conversation, so it's yours.
Richard, we'll have 10 minutes for questions, but before that, Richard, maybe you could address this question I asked earlier. How does a company as large and as important as Mastercard navigate these very troubled geopolitical waters?
Yeah, and let me also just go back and take on this harder question you asked about beyond the West and whether that's the right framing. Because what I saw the last few years was obviously an incredible multipolar world, which really understates how fractionalized the world has become. And no question, there was a point where the United States could come in and say, this is the way we think it should be, and that way is no longer the case, and it shouldn't be the case, right? I mean, we have this interconnected system, and so I don't think it's beyond the West. I think it is in addition to the West, and it's understandable that countries are thinking and regions are thinking about international institutions and multipolarity. I mean, what we've been able to do at Mastercard, I think, is develop a system of rules and protocols that is really quite agnostic to political party, to what government is in control at a particular time. And that has been the signature for success, because what we're concerned about is fairness and trust, confidence in the international financial system, especially as it moves to a digital one. And I think if you just look, I mentioned the disruption from COVID and biological threats, if you just look at what we were able to do, yes, it created great devastation to the world, but we also, because of that system we were built, wherever you were located in the world, small businesses were able to move to digital. Consumers were able to come at home and purchase their supplies. Students were able to continue to be educated because of that digital infrastructure. And that's what we're proud to be a part of and to continue to build. Now, what do we see down the road? We see a lot of threats to this system. And what we are going to try to do is continue to be that trusted partner to governments wherever they are. In Europe alone, we have 5 different hubs where we share information on cybersecurity, on transportation, on urban resilience, sustainability, tourism. And we have to continue to show that we have data, we have technology, but ultimately this is about lifting people up, bringing them into the modern economy. And we saw what happened in COVID when you didn't have those tools and you didn't have access. People were really, really left behind. And so we've set a goal to bring an additional 500 million people into the digital economy. We think it's doable and reachable. Even here in Europe, we've set a goal to make sure all of your e-commerce transactions are quote unquote tokenized. You don't have to put your number into onto the platform. These are important innovations that come from the private sector that we think will continue to demonstrate our value to this whole ecosystem.
Thank you. Thank you. We were able to respect the time. That's a very important point with which to end this initial part, that if we think back to the pandemic, perhaps governments were not up to the task entirely of bringing the world together, but technology certainly was. Think what the pandemic would have been without the revolutionary new kinds of vaccines and without digital technology. Yeah. I'm going to start with a question from the room while giving you time to enter your questions into this app that I think you all know about, Slido. But while you do that, I already have 2 here, but maybe more will come in. I'll have a question from the room. Who wants to go first? I think someone is ready. Okay. Was there a lady there? Because I don't think the gender balance in the panel is particularly edifying. So I would... Okay, we'll have even more gender imbalance then.
Thank you very much. I'm Seamus Allen from the Institute of International and European Affairs. I just want to ask a question. So you've talked about the digital strategy and a lot about what Europe can do to support other countries in terms of digital technology and to support. But I'm wondering, could the panel talk maybe a little bit about what Europe can actually learn from other countries when it comes to digital? And to what degree is that part of the digital international strategy, and what degree are policymakers consciously thinking about it? I know there is some initiatives when it comes to Japan and South Korea and Taiwan and so on, and perhaps elsewhere in the world, Uruguay and South America maybe. So I think that could be something for the panel to talk about.
Commissioner, I'm going to ask you to answer. What can we learn from other parts
Now
of
we
the
can
world?
learn a lot, and we can also basically close the open capacities. And here, now I'm talking more as like a former Minister of Industry and Trade of Czechia, where basically we were looking for experts from abroad and basically introducing programs of digital nomads, and other things. And of course, we see in Asia, but also in Latin America, a clear leadership and clear dedication to digital technologies. And there are countries we can really learn a lot. And basically, this is also the idea of the global gateway. This is not only about know-how transfer from one side to the other. This is about the partnerships. And this is about the partnership when it comes to technologies, but this is also about a partnership when it comes to, as was it mentioned, raw materials, because this is one of the aspects I forgot to mention, but it was then mentioned from the other panelists, because we need these raw materials for the digital and for the green transition. Without basically these raw materials, and we need to ensure access. And this is not only about having the partnership, but this is also about having the alternate routes. So this is then again back to the building the transit corridors, supporting the ports, allowing the countries to manage their own economies, their own transit routes, in order to be a part of the world trade, where basically we have the ambition basically to buy and to benefit from the things we are doing. But I was sitting, for example, yesterday with His Excellency Minister of Foreign Affairs of India, Jaishankar, and we basically ask our teams to sit together already now in June, and basically to think what we can do together, where we have overlaps, where we have who has the better know-how where, and how we can team up for basically supporting the development in other countries. Yeah. So there are definitely, and I now do not want to say where I see basically the showcases, because I will definitely, by listing some of the names, forget one of the important countries, and this is what I do not want to prevent.
It's good news that we'll see developments on India and the EU. We have a question here on Slido for you, Secretary Battaleme. How can European governments and the European Union encourage tech cooperation and partnerships in the private sector? I'm sure you had the opportunity to tell the Commissioner what you think could be done in private, but can you tell us what can the EU and European governments actually do to increase integration and cooperation?
First of all, we are establishing more bilateral and multilateral dialogue with the specific areas of Europe, but also with the United States. For example, at the defense, we are trying to rebuild or building our cyber defense capabilities, and we are working with the U.S. Southern Command, especially on those issues. But the good thing that the United States has a close relation with the private sector. So the first step, the first part of our enhancing our defense enhancement capabilities is with the United States government. But at some point we need to deal with also the private sector. So we are trying to working much efficiently with the American private sector in order to enhance our military capacity. But at the same time, we are trying to engage our private sector, for example, some companies as Globan or Mercado Libre, which are the leading sector, for example, in logistics or in artificial intelligence application, to engage more deeply in national security issues. Because when you look Latin America, there are a separation between what the societies develop in order to cybersecurity or awareness, but there are no link between society and national security, and that is a huge mistake. And I think that Europe is helping us is to create awareness in issues related to national security. Also, United States is on that, but it's a common issue in Latin America. For example, why Latin America, especially Argentina, became such a innovative leader in technological affairs. We have a global giant as Mercado Libre, as I told before, because in the very beginning, the government don't care about the technological sector, and they don't mess with the technology sector. When they started to grow and they started to be a billionaire, then the state come and say, I want to collect taxes.
Of course.
And I love taxes, and we are going to use this money for this technological sector to create equality and that kind of bad ideas that the previous administration had.
Thank you. One last question from the audience. We have time for one more question.
I want to go back and
if you don't have questions, I think both of you could have an opportunity
I wanted
for
to
some final
answer
comments.
this first question about learnings from different regions, and it's so important in when I think about what we do. For example, I will say, Europe was out in front on privacy regime, on data privacy. We took the GDPR rules, we apply them globally now, and that was frankly an innovation that other companies have followed suit. I think about what some countries in the global south do on benefits transfer directly, avoiding the middleman, no more cash. That has eliminated fraud, that has eliminated intimidation, that has really helped a lot of families and individuals, again, be in the digital economy and get their benefits directly, whether it's on a card or directly account to account. I see what is happening with transit systems around the world and how digital it has become, and the solutions that, frankly, we have helped, but we've also learned from governments and from populations what they really want. So I think the question is super important because we have to learn from each other. We now have to build kind of an international regime in this digital space that, frankly, the rules are still being developed as the technology is moving so fast. So a lot more to be done.
I saw the other day that the Washington metro system was bragging on social media that it's now possible to pay with contactless credit cards to use the metro. But this is something people have done in many parts of the world for a long, including, curiously, in Ukraine.
Exactly.
Where it's been done for many years.
They're very digitalized.
Some final words, General Allen, then we finish. We have 30 seconds.
Yeah,
so
Richard, I'll be 30 seconds brief. Richard made a very, very important point on creating the platform capacity for the digitalization of society going forward. And I often hear someone describe countries as large countries and small countries. In this digital environment in which we're moving, in this digital era, I don't think anymore there are large countries and small countries. I think there are fast countries and slow countries. And those countries that are able to embrace the digitalization that can bring wealth to their populations, that can bring education to their populations, that can lift elements of their populations out of poverty, and ultimately defend themselves in a digital environment, they will be the fast countries, regardless of their size, because that capability transcends borders. The slow countries will be the ones where the populations will not benefit. So we have an obligation to help countries be fast countries, not slow countries.
Excellent way to finish. Just final message, don't get out of the room if you want to follow the next panel, because it will start immediately after we leave this stage. Thank you to all my guests. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.